Okay, looks like we're live. Sinad, I think we're in a good place to continue.
All right.
All right. A quick introduction for part 2. So far we discussed about what are the things that should be included or are usually included. Now Senat is going to present different types of DAOs, so we can see what you can find out there if you're looking for specific groups you want to get engaged with.
Thank you, Mina. As you said, we are now going to cover a little bit of the DAO landscape by introducing you all to types of DAOs. The first one would be DAO operating systems. And as stated at the beginning, these are platforms that provide infrastructure to other organizations to become DAOs. One of the first one here is Aragon, which was introduced in 2017, or I would rather say created or formed in 2017. And since then, we saw a whole new space of, or I would say a whole new communities formed around this common goal. One of those is Colony, or DAO House, or Orca, for example. And Orca, for example, I don't know. So if you want to get involved a little bit more and kind of listen as well to so what I do is I listen to podcasts as well about DAOs. And one of these podcasts is hosted by Chase Chapman, which is called On the Other Side, and she's contributing to DAOs as well. One of those DAOs she's contributing to is Orca, which is has certainly one of those things that Orca does is contributing to the space of kind of being a DAO operating system, helping build the infrastructure. And so, yeah, wanted to. This would be the first one. The second one would be protocol DAOs, which are probably the biggest category out there. These are DAOs that are formed around enabling changes in the protocol of blockchain by its members. And usually tokens are used as voting metrics. One of those examples would be MakerDAO, which is particularly famous for issuing the DAI stablecoin back in 2018, I believe. I'm not sure. Sorry if I give false information here. But another example which really revolutionized DeFi and brought it to a whole other level with Uniswap v3. Aave is another example here, or Gitcoin, all protocol DAOs, and they're especially a big. So if you're a developer, for example, or this is, if you're especially dev, this is one of those DAOs you want to get involved in. But there are, of course, also other roles that can be filled within those protocol DAOs that are very developer, I would say, heavy. Third type would be investment DAOs. And investment DAOs are also called venture DAOs, and they allow capital pooling to democratize investing for various DeFi operations. And one example for this would be CultDAO. The founders of CultDAO, or one of the founders, was recently guest on the Crypto Sapiens podcast. And if you didn't know, Crypto Sapiens is a podcast hosted by one of our fellow Bankless DAO contributors, Humpty Calderon, which goes by @Humpty, I believe, or maybe that's wrong on Twitter, but you should be good by Humpty Calderon. Core contributor to Bankless DAO. I think he has been here since its inception and has since then started this little community or little group around creating podcasts, Crypto Sapiens, and now Crypto Sapiens is a sub DAO operating on its own, getting funds from Bankless, for example, in this case, but also applying for grants from other, for example, protocols as well. However, one of the leading examples that we have in Bankless DAO as to how specific work groups can grow organically over time around a specific goal or product or service, which in this case is a podcast. And one of those examples indeed is Crypto Sapiens. And so other investment DAOs are Metacartel or BitDAO. So if you have some capital you want to allocate and help invest as a community, there you go. Fourth point would be Grandstyle. So the community of these DAOs contributes with crypto coins or tokens to the grant pool and votes on funds allocation and distribution decisions towards various Web3 and DeFi projects. One example would be Aave grants or Uniswap grants. There is Moloch DAO as well. Goal here is to help DeFi and Web3 projects which are contributing to our space, which is the Web3 space and the ownership economy, to help them build this infrastructure that we are hopefully going to need going forward. The fifth one, I think, is collectors DAOs, and collector DAOs but their sole purpose is finding and collecting art, and they are similar to investment DAOs, focusing on investment itself, and in this case, really like art investment. So one of the examples is Pleaser DAO, which is, I think, one of the oldest, at least one of the most popular invest or collectors DAOs. They are enabling their community to collect collect capital and have someone who is, for example, can then purchase a specific good, art or collective, and making it part of the, in this case, for example, Pleaser DAO, but of the DAO as making, like, giving the community the opportunity to own specific things, which maybe won't have been possible by a sole individual. And so if you collect 30 people, for example, or 100 or 1,000, you can all collect your capital and invest towards a specific collective, which then you can decide which art do you want to collect. This can be a decision. This can be a proposal, the outcome is then going to be decided by the community by voting, for example, on Snapshot with the governance token, and with a specific outcome. Another type would be service DAOs, which are also a very big category. And so that's a DAO that is formed to provide a good or a service to an individual or a group of individuals. And this would be for Metaverse DAO, for individuals and agencies, a provision of talent, hunting, and support acquisition models. Other examples of service DAOs would be Party DAO or MetaFact. Merchandise, which they have Bankless DAO merchandise as well, so pretty interesting. Yeah, a big part of our community as well. Next up, we got social DAOs, and these are social platforms that offer their contributors to the ability to practice networking by creating a digital democracy where everyone's opinions are heard and people can share their common interests. An example for this would be Cabin DAO, which is creating a decentralized Web3 city where people can meet and interact with each other There is not just there are other examples such as Friends with Benefits, another very popular social DAO, or Bored Ape Yacht Club, which gated, for example, which is able to gate the access to the community by ownership of a Bored Ape NFT. So if you own a Bored Ape or a Mutant Ape, for example, you are eligible or you have access to the community, which is, I think, powered by Web2 tools, for example. So the main communication channel for these communities is Discord, and yeah, they are literally able to do anything that of imagination. So anything can be brought up. If they have large amounts of capital, they can put into work. You have thousands of people, thousands of minds, thousands of ideas, and some interesting things could come up. And so we can move on to media DAOs. And media DAOs allow the direct exchange between content creators and content consumers without the need for intermediaries, and often remunerate their contributors in governance token. One such example would be, of course, Bankless DAO, which is one of the, if not the biggest media culture DAO out there in the space, educating, I would say, all of the users, educating and helping people become crypto natives, and yeah, kind of building the bridge between the current and the hopefully new system that we are going to develop without centralized instances. And one very important note, and I do struggle with that too, is this categorization is not set in stone. As I said, Bankless DAO is not just a media DAO. It's I would say, education DAO and even culture DAO, because we are building our own culture as well in the end. This is one of our goals. But first of all, we want to address the media sphere. And just to go through the section, so some DAOs, such as Bankless DAO, started as media DAOs, but in time extended their functions to serve both a social DAO and a service DAO, providing more than just media content. One of those examples would be that we are building relationship with other DAOs as well. And we, for example, collect services that we as a community have built over the last couple of months. Or the Bankless DAO is now 1 year old, a little bit more than 1 year old. So happy birthday to us. Yeah. We have a vast amount that we have some services that we can offer, which are beyond just media, which are beyond content. They go from, we can offer one of our bots that we have created, which is Degen, to other DAOs that can implement this bot to solve a problem they have. Or we have a consultancy. We have Bankless Consulting as an entity, which also contributes to the space. We have the Translators Guild, where we have that are able to create content or to translate at least content that can be created in several languages. We are now developing a way of creating research reports, because the Research Guild grows as well. And this is another potential service that can be adopted by other entities. And one truth about categorizing DAOs. So while currently we can work with some degree of categorization, DAOs can be formed around any topic or purpose. All it takes is a group of people with a need and a vision and a common goal. The ecosystem is always welcoming. All it takes is a good vision, good governance, or at least a functional governance structure, a strong community, and consistency. And before going to further discussions, I would want to address potentially how to start going into a DAO, because now this introduction has been pretty broad, at some points very detailed, but when it comes to really like finding your feet in DAOs and starting, it's about like adopting the culture and the vibe. So first of all, when you enter a community, say GM, because it shows that you are adopting the culture, which is the Web3 culture, I would say. And then like listen when you're part of the community, just listen and converse and try to really respect the culture, because every DAO has its own culture, and try to internalize it and really build an understanding and respect it. Then over time, you can build suggestions and recommendations that can help, that are part of your contribution, and can help the DAO improve, and really like, and that's maybe, and the last one I will keep for the discussions, what you should not do, or things to avoid, and what to keep in mind. But these are kind of the first as well steps when entering a DAO. So going to further discussions, which is the last slide. What would be some food for thought? So I think this is the open discussion. I will open up the floor. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk, to introduce the DAOs as communities. And I will hand over to Mina and Partnr. Thank you all.
Yeah, so unfortunately, because of our consistent technical difficulties, we don't really have many people watching us live. So it's going to be in the recordings. They're going to get to do that. But I think it's a good opportunity for us to, I mean, we're both DAO people. We work on the same DAO and other DAOs. So yeah, I think it's important, particularly for us who've been working to maybe share our opinions on the food for thought questions, see if we completely agree or we disagree. I personally think that disagreement to some degree is much more interesting than agreement. But yeah, I was thinking maybe we can take the first question, which is what other organization could function in a decentralized manner? I mean, this is a very utopian view I personally have. I think it could be to some, if you take a maxi decentralized view, you could do that with governments to some degree. Like, for example, that every election, instead of electing a group of representatives, a government, a party, a person, you could be granted some different kinds of governance tokens for different ministries. Depending on the country, they can be different ministries. And you can choose to exchange your governance token for a ministry for another one, if you want to have more of a say in a particular ministry and you're not interested in the other one. Maybe you can even choose to buy, and people can have direct access to contributing to ministries and not have to necessarily get involved in areas they're not interested. Of course, that has some issues such as freeloading, and there's others that we're going to come later. Like, could be an issue that poor people could not be capable of getting that involved in governance as richer people, and issues like that. But I don't know. What do you think, Sanat, about my idea and about the question? Obviously.
Yeah, I think there are many opportunities for forming organizations in a decentralized manner, and that's one part where that I wanted to introduce at the start, but I think it's better that I left it in the end, because I tried to figure out, this can't be the only attempt from us to form a community or to form a kind of decentralized organization. And what I found out is that about 100 years ago, there were societies called fraternal societies. I hope I spelled that one right. But you can also refer to them as friendly societies. And funny is that a quarter of all people in the UK and US and Australia use them, and they use them for health insurance and healthcare. And so they were part of these fraternal societies, and as members, they paid a monthly fee, for example, to the treasury, and this for the treasury to cover medical costs of its members. So it was governed by the members and helping the members. And they, for example, could afford a yearly contract with a doctor by and like they could pay for this by the funds in the treasury. And this is kind of one thing that was addressed, like one problem that was solved within smaller organizations, which is medical costs, which is very fascinating in my opinion, and health insurance. And the thing is that governments in the end interfered after complaints by doctors who needed to after complaints by the doctors who needed to lower the cost or the society, you had to be literally the cheap, or not the cheapest one, but doctors had to constantly lower the prices, and which was not in their favor. And so, yeah, government interference stopped this whole movement. And so, back to the questions, like what organizations could function in a decentralized manner, I would counter question what not, because in the end, everywhere, every organization can be a community of a collective of people. And in my opinion, if you have an infrastructure, and thanks to the blockchain, we have a blockchain technology, thanks to distributed ledger technology in the end, which is there's a difference between distributed ledger and a distributed database, because a distributed database also uses the blockchain technology, but they have a central point of failure, or they are centralized. And CBDCs are an example for this, but this is a whole nother topic. But again, thanks to distributed ledgers, inclusiveness is made, and decision making can be made available, I would say, to all of the members which are participating, to all of the members of a DAO. And so, again, like I would say, which organization not? And so definitely, and when we talk about politics and voting, yeah, potentially even better than now, because you can, in the end, today there are so many votes that are like I would say, not unofficial, but that are not countable because of unregistered. No, what are they called? Sorry, I have vocab issues right now. But through blockchain technology, you can literally make every vote count. So as long as you vote, it will be you can see it on the blockchain, and you don't have votes that are not counted because you put an X, like not directly in the box, but a little bit under. And so, yeah.
I mean, I understand you, and I agree to some extent, but well, to play a little advocate, well, now we were discussing from a Web3 perspective where everybody's anonymous and pseudo-anonymous, and to some degree, at some point, you might need some form of centralized way of vouching that someone is eligible to join a space or not. So, like for example, there's been this conversation in the DeSci community, which I feel like hasn't been didn't go deep enough, particularly in the context of social sciences and psychology mostly, because we do have the issue of replicability and validity in the social psychology circles in terms of research. So how can we solve like guaranteeing that, for example, if you have a decentralized peer review system, how can you guarantee that the peers who are reviewing, given that everybody's anonymous or pseudo-anonymous in the space, actually are good quality peer reviewers? Because what DeSci has been currently mitigating is the issue that in the past there had been collusion when it came to peer reviewing, and people would peer review to some degrees in their own interest and other known people's interest. Like that would be an issue. But the peer reviewers first try to figure out who did a papers so can identify could be a potential competitor, because the centralized competitive system that always kind of appears to be an issue. But how do you solve the issue of when you don't know who the peer reviewer is and how qualified they are? Like, for example, I could try to review right now a medical paper, but I have no background nor knowledge in that area. So how can you guarantee that my knowledge of medical science is good enough? You know what I mean? What I'm trying.
Yeah. I know what you mean, and I think there are two ways, I would say. So the first way would be because we're operating in a trustless manner, and blockchain and Web3 are trustless. So how can you build the trust between the members? The thing here is you can vote for a committee, for example, and centralize decision making in this case. So, for example, if you have a community with 1,000 members, or let's say 100 members, and you want to decide who is going to review in the name of us all, or in the name of the community, those all the articles. And you can say as a community, we want to have 10 seats, and they are going to be representatives of this process. And then by voting, you can vote them in. But again, there comes this question again with how do I know that one of those 10 members that I've upvoted is actually eligible and knowledgeable enough and has an expertise in this space to be called or to be kind of a quality reviewer. And there, I would say in the end, those DAOs that can't offer or that don't have those qualified people in the space are going to be less productive and are going to be less efficient. And so I believe in the end, those DAOs are going to survive that really are able or have been able to concentrate qualified people or qualified members. And in this case, it's a reviewing system, decentralized science, who have been able to concentrate the right people that can provide this service on a high quality manner. But again, I struggle with this question too, and this has been something I recently tried to figure out how this can be solved, potentially with higher anonymity. So, well, if you allow people as well to, this again something, how can they prove that they have a background that qualifies for this? You can, of course, set the standards and hard code them into the blockchain after you as a community have voted on this. But again, how can someone entering the community prove this? And there's potentially a way where you can purchase an NFT and you can only have this NFT and you can purchase this NFT through a centralized platform, or I think there are also Looks Rare is a decentralized NFT platform, but for example, OpenSea, and you can only purchase this NFT if you have those specifications. But again, it involves centralized entities that we, in the end, want to get rid of, kind of. So this is a difficult one, which I think the solutions are going to come over time. But for now, I think there is no one particular solution, I believe.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, because I since I came to this space myself, I become pretty much a decentralized maximalist. But then after you spend some time, you realize maybe full decentralization cannot be the solution in every single situation. But then it's the question of how do you allow some centralization in while preventing abuse of power from the people who are going to be empowered through a centralized system. Because through centralized system, there's not equal empowerment or equal opportunity of empowerment. It depends on a lot of factors. So yeah, I mean that's a thing, but there's other things where maybe we need some element of our real life identity to disclose them, like for example proof of humanity, which is a very, very interesting project. At the end of the day, you do have to dox yourself to be a part of it. So yeah, and I cannot see how in other way proof of humanity could work without making the people dox themselves to some degree. So there's a lot of questions, and I don't think I'm becoming necessarily less decentralized maxi. It's just like I'm starting to stretch my brain in directions that I would not normally think of. And I think sorry
I would just say that in the end there's a reason why we have also centralized instances today. I think human beings tend to centralize. So building a community as well as centralizing, in this case, as in a specific area. So people in the end come together, and there is a level of centralization on our planet anyways, because simply because folks tend to come together, folks tend to form a community, folks tend to keep it maybe gated, and to not make it accessible to everyone. So in terms of centralization versus decentralization, I believe there is always going to be centralization, but there is also always going to be a decentralization. And what I mean by that is we should start with decentralizing voting and decentralizing decision making to help figure out what do we actually want to centralize. Because in the end, it helps us kind of decentralizing, for example, knowledge, or decentralizing a specific task can in the end as well as help the community go forward. What I mean by that is, if I say we Grandstyle as a service offer creating research reports as a service, then I'm focusing talent, in this case research talent, on creating research reports. And so there is a kind of centralization on a specific service, which in this case is research reports. And this you can apply this to everything. To come back in the end, a little bit long with that explanation, centralization does not have to be bad, as long as it's adjustable and as long as it's flexible and can be governed by the community. So where the decision of what do we centralize, when do we want to centralize, why do we centralize. So if you ask this question as a community and then come up with the decision, as long this kind of as long as this things, this premises are given, I think communities can come up with good ideas on how and what do we keep centralized or decentralized.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm gonna make just a smaller point here because you did mention, or I'm just hallucinating. You did mention gatekeeping, and I think there is, with centralization, like self-aware centralization, you can have. Well, the reality of working in DAOs is that there's two types of gatekeeping. One of them is, well, the conscious one, like you have to have a certain amount of tokens to make this decision, you have to buy this particular NFT. This is something that the community together in a decentralized manner decides that's what we have to do. But at the same time, I think like there's a formal way of unconscious gatekeeping, which most of DAOs try to mitigate that by having community managers, by having appointed, onboarding people and all that jazz. But there's this form of informal gatekeeping, which is, basically, you come to a new space and you feel like you're not as knowledgeable as everybody, and you don't know if you should express yourself or not. You're always afraid you're going to say something stupid or not in line with the demeanor of that group. And I feel like that's a way of informal centralization, because unconsciously the group, the tribe, however you want to call it, creates a hierarchy of who, even if it's not from the perspective of the group, but the perspective of the newcomer, they in their mind can create this feeling of a hierarchy, and they, as the newcomer, are at the bottom, and the people who are older or more experienced in the DAOs are at the top. So there's whatever you do, there's always going to be, maybe because, as you said, humans have this tendency towards centralization. Maybe it's not with everybody because each individual is different, but particularly from what I noticed, particularly for new people in not only DAOs but also Web3, that tends to be a bit of a trend. Like they feel like they're not as entitled or capable or knowledgeable as someone who's been in the space for longer. I don't know what you think about that part of informal centralization, or I don't know how to call it.
Yeah, this is something, and I've read a few articles about it on how, in the end, this is a way to protect the community as well. Because if you have token-weighted governance, for example, and you have a small community of 100 members, and let's say you have a few 100,000 tokens distributed, I could come in, buy 1 million token, and manipulate this whole community and put up a proposal, vote on it, be the only one who votes on it, but wins because I have more tokens than all other members, and in the end can literally vote on my behalf without even being part of the community. Without even being part of the community, just by having ownership of the governance or being able to do governance. And so this is also a very important question, I think, to be addressed in DAO governance in general, is what voting system do you implement? And how should you do token-weighted voting? If yes, should there be a cap of, for example, 10% per voter? So if I have 40% of the tokens, it doesn't matter when I vote, there's a maximum of 10% that is going to be kind of weighted on the decision. I think optimism, and that's something I wanted to dig deeper a little bit too, building a different governance structure with Citizen House, I think it was, and I can't remember the second one, but the first one the Citizens House, I think every member has kind of an NFT that is proof of being a citizen, and you can vote through specific things with this NFT, and kind of in this council, they have the Citizens Council. And on the other side, there's, I believe, the governance part, the more open one to folks that are have also maybe governance tokens, so they can vote on proposals. So it's a difficult topic in the end, but I would say things are getting solved, things are getting built, people are getting educated. I mean, I educate myself every day as much as possible. Like never satisfied with the amount of knowledge I have or with the amount of overview, because I think it's our responsibility in the end. And I'm always trying to choose my words wisely and not putting out anything out there that is not proven or not fully true. Or if I'm uncertain, I want to address this, because in the end, we are one of the first movers, and we have a big responsibility for this space, because we are shaping it in some ways by having chance to have a voice, as for example with this live, with this introduction to communities in the metaverse. I think this is a big responsibility we have, and so as we are taking this, we have to really think, learn, and improve our knowledge constantly. And so what's correct today may be wrong in 2 weeks, or we come up with a different approach that makes more sense. However, I think this is part of the process.
That was very beautifully put. I really like that. I would tattoo that on my back, the whole speech. Moving forward, so I kind of already answered that. I mean, I was thinking to move forward in questions, but we can also move forward. So I kind of already answered the question from my point of view. How do you feel about governments as DAOs? Do you think that's feasible?
So do you mean governance? Or governments, or was it governance?
Governments as state governments, like could governments work as DAOs?
Good question. If they get rid of central banks, maybe yes. Or if the community can own when new supply is getting printed or not, maybe yes. But as long the funny thing is, they are supposed to work like rather, I would say, decentralized organization, because in the end, what do we have in a democracy? We have the people that vote representatives into the government, and those representatives make the decisions on best behalf of the citizens. I think this whole philosophy is kind of still true, and kind of this approach is reasonable in big countries and in big communities, where imagine how much it would, like, the amount of effort you would have to put in for every single decision that you need to make if you make it decentralized. And so if you have a community of 1,000 and 10,000 of members and you need to get decentralized decision making on it, I mean, of course you can have snapshot proposals with a quorum. When the quorum is reached, the decision counts for everybody. But in the end, when it comes to, like, where are we coming from? Where is this idea coming from? Like, governance, or at least countries, should have been the ones that implemented this correctly. But over time, it has been showed that rather improving the system and rather doing what their duties are, I would say they used it for their own benefits, because of the personal greed that that are human being, and this comes down, I think, to really core functions of how human being works from a biological perspective, I believe, where there's greed when there's an opportunity, and there's fear when there's basically like greed and fear. And you have greed when you see an opportunity, and as you have power, you have many opportunities and you can benefit yourself. But in the end, a DAO, you can, when you see someone making decisions on their behalf, you can, because we operate in a transparent manner, you can point to this community member, for example, and then like the community decides what to do with him or with her or with the group or whatever. Do we need governments to become decentralized organizations? Maybe, maybe not. Do we need governments at all for this space to work? I believe as an on-ramp. So when I think of how do I get cryptocurrencies, how do I get these governance tokens, I have to, as a starter on-ramp, money. I have to, in my case, I'm in Europe-based. I use the euro. I have to go through a bank account where my euro is on, and this bank account is controlled by a bank, and this bank is controlled by a central bank. But however, and I have to transfer this amount to I have to transfer my money to a centralized exchange, and from the centralized exchange, I buy those. In most cases, I buy ETH and go to decentralized exchanges and buy whatever token I want to need. I think for this on-ramp process, we would need governments. But in the end, when we have a lot of, when we are already in this space, I don't see why do we need the traditional governments and why do we need to decentralize them. So they're operating as centralized organizations, could operate or are supposed to operate more as decentralized organization because they use democracy, or I would say rather democracy in most areas or in Western areas, as their core function. But the intransparent way of governing allows them to abuse their powers for their own benefits.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're right. Governments are supposed to be decentralized, but the reality is that, well, the community can elect like a president or a prime minister or, a whole government. They cannot really elect the bureaucrat who deals with their paperwork when they need assistance. And the reality is that all those people, the presidents, the prime minister, the ministers, the bureaucrats, are the advisors of the ministers, are indeed paid from taxpayers' money. So basically, they're supposed to work for the community, but they don't necessarily work for the community. And when something goes down or goes bad in a state, in a government, when there's a decision which has been very poorly managed, because the system itself is so bureaucratic and it's very hard to tackle who to blame of, who you should, get off their job or switch or change, it's very hard to ever properly mitigate the group of people, or like hold responsible the group of people who should be held responsible. There's always that bureaucrat, that advisor, that consultant who ended up being in the same position and giving similar advice for the next elections, even though you changed the government or the president or the prime minister. So yeah, I agree with you. I feel like even though they're technically decentralized, they do function and they do stumble on very clear centralized issues. But I think that also deals with very high bureaucracy at the same time, which is, some might say, important when you deal with very high group of people, but that's another conversation for maybe another video. But somehow in line with this, how much centralization can a DAO actually allow until you cannot call it a DAO anymore? Can you have a 100% fully decentralized DAO and still be functional in terms of governance, for example?
That's a good question. And for the first one, I would say we have to figure it out, because this aligns with what I've previously addressed, is that an amount of centralization or an area of centralization is going to happen over time. You need to centralize something, or the DAO will centralize something to to help the DAO in the end as well move forward. But as DAOs grow, becoming fully decentralized, I think this question is going to turn into what will be fully decentralized. And I hope that governance in terms of voting and decision making will stay fully decentralized in a manner that if you centralize decision making, this can be overturned or adjusted going forward. So if you put up folks, for example, if you have a committee of, or if you have a centralized party within your decentralized autonomous organization that does a specific task and has been voted, and this has been voted by the community, that if the community is unsatisfied with it, this can be changed, or there can be a voting that where this committee gets exchanged, or you come up with a total new idea of how to govern or how to organize with a specific task. Because I believe fully decentralization in terms of decision making should be a high priority, and we should, or I could see DAOs centralizing something, or because in the end, centralizing, for example, what we have in Bankless DAO is we have several guilds. And so one could argue that we are a decentralized autonomous organization operating with several guilds, and these guilds are formed around specific tasks. For example, we have the research, or we have the education guild, we have the design guild, we have several other guilds, and you can call this a centralization already, because you are concentrating areas of your or community members towards specific areas of your DAO. But this is okay, because in the end, these are sub DAOs, and these become new types of DAOs. So we will have research DAOs in some point, because there are going to be so many DAOs that concentrate people in specific areas, that is in these terms, for example, education or research. And what you have in the end is you have a collective of folks that are doing research, that are creating research reports. You have a collective of people that do education, educational series. And I think you can, you will have new types of DAOs coming up through this centralizing process, which is not in case bad, because you want to have the best, or you want to have, as you said, if someone is going to review a paper, it should be a qualified person. And to figure out who's the qualified person, or to come up with a group of people that is qualified enough, or to review this article and to be also hold accountable for that. You need them to let them come together, and in the end, like this is a centralizing process. So, yeah, I think this covers what I think about it.
Very interesting, as usual. So I think that that's all I had. I don't think I can add or contribute to your thoughts with anything significant. So I think we can move forward.
All right. Should I go with that, or do you want to close?
Go for it.
Okay. Two kind of key takeaway points, as addressed at the start, the last point of our agenda. What can you take away from this whole discussion and thoughts that we had? So DAOs are decentralized organizations that are facilitated through the blockchain technology, and would be the first one. And the second one would be there is a variety of DAOs that are formed for specific purposes determined by their own community. And as I've introduced a little bit at the end of the fifth, I think, point was it, or the fourth, what we have discussed of how to start and how to participate in DAOs, where said like introduce yourself, say GM, align with the culture, listen, offer a form of respect for the culture, give suggestions. One thing that I want to address in the end is really don't overcommit yourself, or don't be discouraged if some proposals get rejected, because everyone could come in and give proposals and they can be voted on. Take it as a learning process. Would be also one of the key takeaway points is as you contribute to DAOs, you will see some barriers, or you will have to deal a lot with yourself. You will have to deal a lot with your ego and projecting things that don't work to the DAO instead of maybe to yourself, and see what can you change to help the community. And so how can you benefit the group of people or how can you benefit the organization you want to help move forward, you want to help to pursue the goal of achieving something. And so just wanted to highlight this as well as kind of a third point. As you come into a DAO and as you start contributing, don't be discouraged or sad or don't give up on DAOs just because you haven't figured out yet the way to contribute and participate the best way. And so I think this is also a DAO-wide general problem, I would say, is how to balance life and DAOs, because a lot of times you will overcommit. You will take things personal when something happens, and you will play with the thoughts of leaving the DAO. But how to build yourself a tool and skill set that helps you continue your contribution and gaining some nice achievements, and as well as a piece of ownership of the hopefully brighter future that we are going to build upon those DAOs.
Yeah, I second that. Boundaries are very important in DAO work. Just because you have full control over your schedule, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be capable of making the difference between your normal life and your DAO life. And sometimes that can get tricky. As I myself, as a DAO contributor, I get into that very often. I go through cycles of work for a week straight, and then I realize at the end of the week that I don't feel like, or I'm not capable mentally to uphold the rhythm. So for anybody who wants to join DAOs, always be transparent with your experiences and your feelings. And even though you feel like you're talking to a computer, there's someone on the other end who's going to be understanding, and they're going to understand that we're all just humans and we're trying to do something quite new and maybe difficult. So yeah, if you join DAO, allow your human side to also be seen. That's like my contribution to Senat's thoughts.
Very well said.
All right, this has been our presentation. We had some issues, unfortunately. I'm sorry for whoever was looking forward and you got interrupted. Maybe you found the second part later and you're wondering how did that happen. We're also wondering that. I'd like to thank Senat again. It's been a great honor. It's always lovely to have such a thoughtful guest to talk about such a difficult topic. And yes, for the ones who are going to watch it later, don't forget, we also have a test coming. So don't forget to fill it in. Maybe you score yourself some Partnr tokens when we release them. And yeah, I'm also going to put the slides in the Discord, so you can also read through them to catch up with everything. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Have a lovely Sunday.
Yeah, thank you all.
Ranganath, I think we can close the stream. Yes, thank you.